California Governor Gavin Newsom not taking responsibility for his state's failure to handle the massive wildfires.
We do know, though, from reporting here locally that one reservoir that serves the Palisades was not full.
And that's exactly what triggered my desire to get the investigation, to understand what was happening with that local reservoir. That was not a state system reservoir.
Does the buck stop with you?
I mean, you're governor of California. You might as well be the mayor of California. We're all in this together.
You know, Mr. Not So Clever, he's not the mayor of California, but residents in Los Angeles are furious with officials across the board. A petition calling on LA Mayor Karen Bass to resign, and it has received more than 125,000 signatures. Bass and Fire Department Chief Kristen Crowley spent the last few days throwing mud at each other, all while entire towns are leveled.
And while state lawmakers don't seem to have time to address the fires, they did manage to hold a special emergency session to authorize $50 million to defend California from the incoming Trump administration.
And for more, let's bring in California Assembly Republican leader James Gallagher. James, thank you in such a difficult time for all Californians, for all Americans who are concerned about this. Let's start with your reaction to the State House, or lack of it, Gavin Newsom, Mr. Mayor of California.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dagen and David, for having me on. And first, ask your viewers to really just pray for us out here in California, that these winds would die down and that we can stop these fires. But once we get past this this terrible fire, yet another one. I represent Paradise, that was destroyed by fire in 2018. We've seen far too many of these, and from Paradise to the Palisades, the problem is catastrophic fire. And unfortunately, our state house and our governor particularly believes that right now is the time to spend money on government lawyers to sue Donald Trump instead of focusing on the real issues that are before us, which wildfire is one of the most pressing.
But it is a problem with liberal priorities and left-wing priorities. James, I'll just point out that the insurance issue has been ongoing for almost 40 some odd years, and that because of the left-wing politicians in charge, they've largely been focused on reducing future climate damage. But since 1988, so for 36 years, insurers in the state, the home insurers, were never allowed to model future climate and environmental risk or those hazards into their pricing. So in essence, California the liberals were climate change deniers when it came to the rules governing home insurers, because they wanted to keep the property market propped up rather than homes safe.
Yeah, and it gets even worse. I mean, Gavin Newsom, would rather focus on banning new gas-powered vehicles and what kind of cars people can drive, rather than with dealing with the underlying issue, which is risk. The reason why we have an insurance crisis and why we have now insurance companies leaving the state, not writing policies, is because we have not dealt with the great risk in California. And it's driven primarily by the fact that, we stopped logging and timber harvest, back in the 80s, early 90s. We have not done anything to really manage our public lands. And now we have tinderboxes in all parts of California where we've allowed brush and trees, and we haven't done that fundamental work of managing our lands. It's a tinderbox just waiting to go off.
Yeah, and overbuilding, too. That's a huge problem. But again, it goes back to the housing boom. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, a quick one, James. On Cal Fire, they don't have enough money to cover the claims that are coming. How do you reconcile that in California?
Yeah, well, there's a program called the FAIR Plan, and that is the insurer of last resort. So when you can't get insurance from anybody else, State Farm, farmers, whoever, people go on this plan, and it's sort of a government plan that's backed up by registered insurers in the state of California, and it doesn't have enough assets. And what we are looking at is with this Palisades fire, I think upwards of 30% of the homes in the Pacific Palisades were on FAIR Plan. It's not going to, it looks like it's not going to have enough assets to pay out claims, which then would go up against the insurers in the state. And we already have premiums going up. We already have insurers backing out of the state. It is an insurance crisis. Cal Fire, who's battling the fire, they've been doing some amazing work, fighting fire, and we've beefed up our firefighting army out here. But again, we haven't done enough to really prevent the things that cause fire, which is these forced fuels and otherwise, and ignition points. We haven't updated our electrical infrastructure out here that sometimes is the cause of those fires.
James Gallagher, thank you so much. And the FAIR Plan is actually high-risk people getting cheap policies and low-risk homeowners helping pay for that. And so it's people who are not in fire zones who will wind up footing the bill for all of this.
Yeah.
Coming up, thank you so much.